نختبر مواقف نتبدل قاعده مثلا لو ضيوف لكذا ما نتاثر. قسمناها نصين هاي هون سوينا حمام مشان الواحد يتحمم ويتغسل فيها. هاي جوا هو التواليت. وهاي اللوحات يعني هون هاي اكبر لوحات يعني. بس الواحد مشان هيك يبقى مرتاح نفسيا. قبل ما اجي بيوم واحد لهون كنت زارع مساكب بقدونس وكزبره وسبانخ خضره يعني كنت زارعهم. تركتهم وجيت اول حسيت حالي لو شوف بدي اتركهم واطلع. هي يعني كثير بضحك انه المرض مشان انه تركنا الزراعات، قال يعني انت تركت البيت كله ما سألت غير هذول؟ ايه والله. طور اذا بتعطي حوالي هي تبع المي جوا تبع المي تبعنا. وشفت الطور.
My name is Faisal Attrache. I directed this film. To people who care and you know are affected by it means a lot to me. In the summer of 2013, and I went back for a follow-up trip in May 2014, so just over a year ago. And then we finished the film in October 2014. So since then, it's been showing at festivals. We premiered the film in San Francisco at the United Nations Association Film Festival. And since then, we've been showing it. We just showed it at Newport Beach, actually, on Monday. And that was our 6th festival. And we're going to premiere internationally next month in June at the Sheffield Doc Fest, which is in the UK. And I just got an email today that we're being nominated as Best Short Film, Best Short Documentary Film there, so that's kind of exciting for us. Thank you. It's like this collective guilt almost that everyone feels because it's so frustrating when you want to help, but nobody really knows how. And this was, for me, a result of that within my own expertise, filmmaking, of how I can do something to help, whatever that is. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to hear a lot of good questions from you guys.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm actually very honored to be here and see the room full of very passionate, interested, and heartfelt souls. It honors me and my work that I've done. My name is Panelists. I'm the founder and director of For the Unseen. We are a local not-for-profit located here in Irvine. So my story is really short and simple. I quit my job in 2012, snuck into Syria 4 times by foot in 2013. I felt called to go help the Syrians. I am actually not Syrian. I do not speak Arabic. I have a friend that's Syrian American. She was fundraising in the fall of 2012. I started helping her, and a couple months later I'm on a plane to Turkey, and then I call her, and the plan was to stay in Turkey. And I tell her I'm going inside. And she's like, okay, to the camp? And I'm like, no, I'm gonna go in. And she goes, no, you're not. You're not gonna come back. You have to come back. So I went, and it was the most profound experience of my life. I saw things that no one should see. In fact, things that should not be happening in this world. I went 4 times and was grateful to be able to do the work I did. Took in food, took in actually money on me, $15,000 on my first trip tied to my inner thigh, and bought food in bulk, handmade food bags in about a day or two's time, as quickly as possible because my time inside had to be short. Distributed it to families living in dirt holes. Parking lot size spaces, no toilets, no kitchens, no running water, nothing. Children, dozens of people in a small space. Came home after my 4th trip, was very tired. Family was suffering in their own ways, having me gone 4 times. So instead of doing something short-term, immediate need, my organization, SAMA, a former member, board member of the organization, we decided to do something sustainable. So we helped start a school in Lebanon. It's actually in Tripoli. It's called Shiro Alamal, which means Birds of Hope. It was a far better idea because now we've not only helped 350 children, which was the start of the enrollment, but now it's 1,000. We're providing supplies, paying rent, helping, of course, and more help is needed, school fees, supplies, everything, and also instilling a psychological program to help with the children that have suffered from extreme trauma. Anyway, it's my pleasure to do the work I've done. I hope to continue doing it, and I welcome any questions. Again, thank you for all being here, and thank you for having me.
My name is Faisal Attrache. I'm the chairwoman for the Syrian Institute for Progress. It's a non-profit organization based here in Orange County, California. We focus on assistance for the humanitarian aid for the Syrian refugees. We've been working since May 2012. We started with small projects, just such as baby infamil. We sent containers filled with the humanitarian aid, such sleeping bags, blankets, whatever necessity things. But lately we are mostly focusing on the burns victim. Our organization had formed a partnership with the Schreiner Hospital, and we bring the burns victim from Syria, and we treat them here for free. The Schreiner sponsor all the medical treatment, and our organization take care of the role of transportation, airfare, translation, housing, foods, whatever needed in the States for these children with their parents. 8 years old, and she suffered from severe burns all over her body. I learned a lot from her. I just visited her last weekend, and she came to the States without her parents. She came with her uncle. Due to the barrel bombs on her house in Syria, everything was damaged. So there is no birth certificate, there is no passport, no documentation. Fortunately, the State Department were able to help us bring her without a passport to the States. We faced lots of challenges to bring these kids over here, but it's a changing life story, so it's really worth every bit of our work. I have some of our friends over here who's been living this story with me day by day and helping us all over the places with our journey with this changing life. Isra is gonna stay here in the States for over a year. She did not have an eyelid. She could not stand, she could not lift her arms. I could not describe to you how severe burns she had been suffering from. But she wants to live here, and she's willing to come to the States without her parents because she has the will of life and she wants to continue. She's really appreciated for everybody who helped with this project, and we're hoping to bring more victims, not just from the burns victim. Right now we're trying to get access with the Schreiner in LA to help with the artificial limbs. A lot of children have been suffering from losing their legs, their arms. I think this project is my main project for the few years because I got so much sucked into it, and it takes all my day. I can't describe how happy I was when one of the victims just finished his treatment and went back home. He could not stand on his feet for more than 5 minutes. Now he's able to. And I don't know, I mean, the suffering for these Syrian children, it's been tremendously huge. And it's consistently growing, not day by day, it's hour by hour. And minute by minute, every minute there is a Syrian person become a refugee. And if we don't do something about their suffering, we're just empowering the voice of the extremists. Because these children will have no future if we don't help them, and if we don't provide them with the minimum standard of life. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to thank each and every one of you for what you've done for the people of Syria. If I may, I'd like to ask the first question. You each have had a chance to go there and talk to people. Your documentary really brought a lighter side of the refugee camps. there's obviously a different outlook as well. And so I appreciate you putting this in front of us. And what we will do is, if you don't mind, we can provide the link to your video and as well as yours, Susan, to all the folks who've attended here tonight. But the question that I have for each of you is, what is in the mindset of some of the people that you talk to? What are they asking for, and is there any hope that you see from talking to these folks?
So as I mentioned, I was there summer 2013, May 2014, and the thing is, things are changing so fast. I'm in actually yesterday I spoke with Samad and caught up with him a little bit, and it's just the hope that I kind of saw in him before. Maybe during the film you saw some of that. You might have seen a change 7 months later. I think at this point there's barely any left. I think they've lost faith in anyone helping them, whereas before the rhetoric was more like, you know, we need the world to support us, to help us, where are the Muslims, where are the Americans, where whatever. At this point it's just we don't care who solves this or how it's solved. We just want to go back home. You know, and even it's just at this point, yeah, become about living in dignity, living in peace, and nothing is more important than that, especially for them and their families. So I felt that, especially since compared to the first time I went there, that there's definitely a lot less hope. I mean, they don't have any, in terms of their requests and any solution or anything like that. I mean, they, you know, back then everyone was kind of charged and ready, and you'd hear things like, we don't need, don't give us food, give us weapons. We want to go back and fight and get our country back. Like, that's what you'd hear kind of earlier on. But now at this point, I think it's just, they've seen how fruitless it's been to ask because no one's been giving. But their end goal is still to go home. Definitely, I mean, that's their main priority, and frankly, anything that helps them do that is what they want. So it's for them specifically, again, as you mentioned, this is the Zaatari camp in Jordan. It's the second largest camp in the world. When we were there, it was around 150,000 to 200,000. Now it's about 85,000. It's dropped a lot, but it's still, you know, represents a very specific situation. In Lebanon, the refugees have it a lot worse. Inside Syria is even worse. You know, so every situation for a refugee is different depending on where they end up. So I guess you can say the Zaatari camp refugees have it better maybe than other refugees, but it's a good example that we can give humanitarian aid all we want and give them food and shelter, but even that, for them who have shelter and food, you can see that it's not about that for them. Suddenly your life becomes pointless. Why are you living? You know, for people who are like you and me, had homes and cars and whatever, suddenly overnight having nothing, you know, they still have those goals of educating their kids, of going on vacations, of whatever, and they can't do that. So, you know, you have the situation of the extreme bad where some don't even have food to eat or warm clothes to wear in the winter, but even the refugees that have it better off, kind of psychologically, they don't see the point in living anymore. So it's not good for anyone, and the only solution is to get them back home, frankly. I don't have a specific answer to that. I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a little bit, but I just want to pass it off.
My experience with the Syrian refugees is very different. I was quite impressed with the film, by the way. It was wonderful. I have seen photos of Zaatari camp, and that was a great view of the camp. The camp that I went through to get inside of Syria was Atma camp, which is in the south of Turkey. It's actually physically in Syria. I had to drive through there to go further in. The living conditions of that camp is not even 5% of Zaatari camp. I mean, that was amazing. That camp is great. Most of the people are without shoes. Most of the people don't even have a tent. There's I think, one area of running water. The living conditions are horrendous, and further in, as I've already expressed earlier, is far worse. In terms of how the Syrians feel inside, one of the most difficult moments I had was I was going inside of Syria right before the US was going to strike, and my father was reluctant on my going in, but I went in anyway, and I was asked over a dozen or 2 times if the US is going to help us. And I knew the answer, which was no. I was pretty confident for some reason. And now they don't even ask. All they ask is for me to show up and play with their children, and show up and just be with them because they're alone. And most of them, when I ask them to leave with their children, because they have many children, they refuse, because this is their home and they can't speak the language anywhere else, and there's no way to survive anywhere else. So that's my experience.
For me, I've never been into the refugee camps or inside Syria since the uprising started in 2011. But members from my organization had visited the same camp she was mentioning, which is called Itmay. I know stories that there is not even restrooms, no bathrooms for this camp. It's below any humanitarian standard. There is no access for clean water, no electricity, no food. These people have nothing basically. And some of them even say it's better maybe to stay inside Syria, at least we have relatives to help something. The fortunate one who crossed the border to Turkey had been generous in hosting lots of Syrian refugees, giving them all these caravans like we saw in Zaatari camps, so it's a little bit better, but no place like home. These people want to go back to Syria no matter what. The displaced people in Syria, it's far way worse than the refugee, because there is siege in Syria. In Mukhayyam al-Yarmouk, I don't know if anybody witnessed the footage, how when they broke the siege, the people just fled that camp, which is horrific. I mean, people are dying from hunger. This is the 21st century, and we should not witness something like this, but yet it's happening in Syria. The problem is there is no policy for Syria. There is no strategy, and nobody knows when it's going to end. And that's the worst situation, because the numbers are continuously growing. We're losing lives day by day, and Assad is still remain in power, and people lost hope.
Please.
Faisal, the video is awesome. It was really, really powerful. But I was curious, that I've got to talk to Sinead quite a bit and heard some of her stories, but I'm curious what the most, if you had to trace back to the most powerful thing that you've seen, that you saw while you were there, if you could kind of bring us into that moment a little, because I don't think a lot of people here, I know I probably will never experience something like that, so I'd be curious to hear that if you're comfortable sharing it.
Yeah. His question was, what was the most, describe the most powerful thing, I guess, that happened to me while I was making this. One of the biggest things about the refugee crisis in general is the number of youth and child refugees. Because a lot of the men stay and fight or are killed, and the women and elderly and children flee, so you have about 50% now of the camp is under 17, under the age of 17, more than 50%. So you see a lot of youth and a lot of kids in the camp. And it's the most, I guess, visually when you enter the camp, it's a walled off, the camp is, as you saw, like a guarded open air prison. It's about 1¼ square miles. So all those people are packed into 1¼ square mile, but you see kids everywhere. And for me, that's the saddest thing, because I'm just afraid of the kids. Samir now has 2 kids and 1 on the way. Within the next few days, his wife will be giving birth to their 3rd kid. So what's scary for me is thinking about that, is that these kids are growing up thinking that this is normal. They're growing up thinking that, you know, this is what home is, this is what it's like to live, this is when, you know, it's nothing like that. Their parents and the other generations have a completely different image in their mind. So I fear most for the kids, and when I was there, we brought like just pencils and erasers and cheap toys kind of to pass around as much as we can carry in our bags. And when we entered the camp, we started talking to people, and we met with a family, and we gave their children some of the toys, and they're playing with it. And before we knew it, those kids told other kids, and those kids told other kids. So suddenly we had 30, 40 kids kind of surrounding us, asking for these toys that we brought. And what kind of shocked me the most is it became a little mob, a mob of children, which, you know, they did, you know, they were asking for the toy. We gave out as much as we could. When we weren't fast enough, they took it out of our hands and grabbed everything we had. And I've never in my life felt threatened by you know 10-year-old kids, but I was afraid, because at the end, when we had nothing left to give, they started picking up rocks. They started picking up rocks and saying, "Give us toys, give us toys." And if it wasn't for a few local parents or something that kind of like literally kicked them out of the way, you know, I can imagine they might have started throwing rocks. I don't know, but what's for me, what's kind of one heartbreaking and something I think about is that it's a survivalist mentality in there. There's never enough aid for anyone. So whenever any kind of aid gets in there, if you're not the first in line, if you're not fighting to get whatever that is, if it's an eraser, who cares, as long as I have one, that's kind of the mentality. So that's kind of what scared me the most, is that it doesn't matter what you're bringing, they'll take anything. And the fact that they're used to this, to having to scavenge for whatever, turns them into this little mob, even at such a young age. You know, you can imagine how these kids are going to grow up. And that's for me kind of, you know, you can see the suffering that the adults are going through and everything, but the thing that hits you the most is that you know, the future generations that are going to suffer. That's what scares me the most. Yeah.
I think that was just for him, right?
No, Pinay, that was for you too.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realize. I can't pick one. I'm sorry. There's a couple, but I had a similar situation with children. I brought with me once chalk, and goodness, there was 5 kids in front of me, and it was like 50 in like 5 minutes. I was like, where'd you guys come from? And Play-Doh, and anyway. But for me, the most intense moment of my 4 trips inside of Syria was when I decided to split up on my first trip with Nasreen, a Syrian American who went in with me on that first trip, who translated for me, because again, I don't speak a word of Arabic. We decided to split up, or actually I decided to stay behind, to continue bagging food, because we needed to keep bagging food, and I wanted to keep working. And I was in the car, and I actually got out, and she's like, no, we don't separate, remember, that's the rule. And I was like, no, if I don't stay back, the men aren't going to do anything. If I'm in that room, they're going to keep doing stuff, because I'm going to be doing stuff, and we have to keep feeding people. So she looked at me and she left, and when she left, I thought, what did I just do? I can't speak to anyone. So I thought, okay, it's fine, I'll just go bag food. And so I went and bagged food. In about 20 minutes, it was very normal for me to hear bombs dropping and the floor rattling every 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, every 30 minutes. But this particular moment, it felt a lot stronger. And there was one window in the room I was in, and there's 2 men in there. None of them speak a word of English. And the floor was shaking and the window was rattling. And I look up and I actually saw the debris of the bomb. And I remember one thing that Nasreen told me that we learned is that they normally fall in 2 and 3s in that area. And I was like, oh gosh, that was the first one. And I looked to my right, and both the men who were standing and bagging food were sitting down, sucking their cigarettes, and just mumbling in Arabic. And I have no idea what they're saying, which is probably a blessing. And I just looked at them and I went, and then the man just said, sit. And I was like, sit? Like, God, you know, like we should run or something. So I sat, and then the second one fell about 2 buildings behind the one I was in. And it was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. And that was the first moment I thought, what are you doing here? You need to go home. And when, after the second one, the men kept saying, yalla, yalla, which means hurry, hurry. I learned that. So I just got up and walked out, and I wish I hadn't walked out. I would have rather stayed inside. I saw people coming out from the debris, covered in blood. One of the little girls, I didn't know she was harmed. I picked her up. She had blood on her. It ended up being her aunt's blood. I saw cars driving high speeds by with people in, well, I couldn't tell, people in the cars injured, to the hospital that was down, a ways down, a good 20-minute drive down, that I actually had just given supplies to, just bought medical supplies for, which I was grateful for. But that had to be the most intense moment of my time in Syria, and definitely made me question why this is okay to be happening anywhere in the world. It doesn't matter where. It doesn't matter if it was happening here, if it was happening there. People always ask me, why did you go to Syria? You know, you're not Syrian. And we're all human. Why aren't we helping each other? I don't understand that. There's this immense amount of separation. We're really one human race. So anyway, that was my profound moment.
My question is that you may not be able to answer this. Why is the United Nations doing anything to establish peace in Syria? The second question is, have you contacted the United Nations to do so?
It's a very good question. I don't know if any of us have an answer, but I personally have not contacted the United Nations to do anything. I think in this specific conflict of Syria now, especially the way it's evolved over the last 4 years, is frankly it's not even about Syria anymore. It's not about for the world in terms of geopolitics. It's not about Syria. This is completely a proxy war between, you know, Iran, Russia. You have Turkey. You have Saudi Arabia. You have everyone kind of doing their thing to end with an advantage somehow, more of an advantage than they had before. And that's the problem, is that this conflict in Syria benefits too many nations. I don't think they can agree, no one can agree on how, you know, it needs to end, because they all have a different outlook from their point of view on how they want it to end. And that's the biggest conflict from the way I see it. And even something like ISIS has nothing to do with Syria. It has nothing to do with the Syrian revolution or the Syrian people. ISIS is not made up of Syrians, it's just some crazy organization that took advantage of the chaos. But the effect that's had is that, look what the media does, is that you haven't heard about these Syrians still under barrel bombs, the Syrians still protesting or still fighting for you know, freedom. That's still going on. But you never hear about that anymore because ISIS is what everyone wants to focus on. And yeah, it's a huge threat, but that's just kind of the way media and politics work, is just moving our attention away from the conflict in Syria. So, I think frankly, I don't know if the UN is the one that has the power to make these kind of decisions. I mean, I wish they can make some kind of, pass some no-fly zone where they can bring in aid and protect, because at this point, I mean, the Syrian government is losing ground, and the rebels have the Free Syrian Army, and others have captured a lot of territory, but what continues to hurt them is the airstrikes, the barrel bombs that keep dropping. So, I mean, it's obvious, yeah, a no-fly zone would protect from that, but I don't know if any country is willing to do that, again, because of their own, the gains they hope to get from this whole conflict.
That's a great question, and to answer, I have not contacted the United Nations, but I was contacted a couple times and had meetings with a higher organization that I cannot name, and did help them as much as I could, and I helped a lot. And they at the end said there's very little they could do, which was really disheartening for me because I took a great amount of my time to sit with them and hope that there was something that was going to come of it, and I finally had hope. And then at the end, it turned out that, you know, it was issues of politics, issues of money, and a long list of things that they didn't really want to specify to me. So that's my experience.
We tried to contact the United Nations, but it went nowhere. We spoke many times on several occasions to the State Department because at my organization, we represented the Syrian diaspora. In 2012 was hosted by Secretary Clinton. And in the year of 2012, there was a big thing happening in Syria. And the major question, why there was no fly zone, because if there was a no-fly zone at that moment, the whole conflict would end and Bashar would have fallen right away. But they kept running away from the answer, and they really did not end the conflict in Syria. And my feeling is because of the Iran issue. They're dealing with Syria as a winning card to play with Iran, so they would take the nuclear thing away from Iran. And that's why the Syria issue is still going to stay on. And we heard President Obama in 2013, if chemicals weapon has been using, this is a red line. This red line has been crossed too many times. Until now, Assad still used the chlorine chemical weapon, and yet the United Nations approved that if someone in this world use the chlorine weapon right now, they can invade the country right away without any veto from anyone, and yet nobody's doing anything. So the answer is no one is willing to do anything, and back again, there is no policy for Syria. No one is willing to do anything about it.
Sir.
This film is so real human tragedy. But you look at the whole process, not that simple. You know, right from the beginning, this barber said was a peaceful demonstration. May not be true. Because the beginning, they emulate the Egyptian. Those Arab Spring, you brought down Mubarak government, brought down Morsi. The Morsi imposed Islamic law, so very soon they lost their popularity. Now it's LCC took over, more or less like before. But Syria is different. Syria majority are Sunni Muslim. They don't like this Alawi, this Shiite faction, the Iron Head group for over years. The Syrian country into civil war. This is different from Egypt. Right? Beginning, the rebels support Saudi Arabia, part of the United States too. The beginning, they have gained a lot of ground. But lately, it seems that the government taken upper hand. Now the government, this Assad had the Iranians help, and also part from Russia too. So this is not that simple. But eventually, got to have a ceasefire. The country set up some peace accord, then give amnesty, let the refugees go home. Then a big country would put up money to rebuild the country. The United States, China, Japan, Germany and France to donate some money.
Sir?
The final solution.
So, Doctor, we have this room until 8, and we need 5 minutes to close up. So, what is your question, sir?
My question is, these things eventually have to wait for the civil war ended.
I'm with you. I'm sure these guys are as well.
Can you repeat it?
The question, well, so Doctor said that he really would wish that the civil war would end. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. We're all with you, sir. There was a question back here, sir.
Yeah, I do have a question. Okay, so my question is, how do you hold, this is for the entire panel, how do you hold the world's attention? And the context of my question is, I served in Afghanistan, with the United States military. And usually when I tell people I served in Afghanistan, it's met with one or two comments. That sucks, or what a waste of time. Now, obviously it's been going on for almost 40 years. And a lot of the things that you're talking about, I witnessed in Afghanistan. And it's still going on. but nobody cares because it's Afghanistan. So how do you hold the world's attention?
The question is, how do you hold the world's attention? And by the way, I am Afghan American, and I do thank you for your service, both to this country and to Afghanistan. And if you'd asked Afghans, there was a light of hope that was brought in when the coalition forces moved in. I actually left my job here, went over there to work for the Minister of Finance, who's now the President. So people do actually appreciate your help, especially the folks that have nothing to do with politics, the common people. So thank you for your service.
Let me specify, it was not Afghans.
No, I understand. War in general.
A lot of it is Americans.
Yeah.
Americans are like, who cares?
Right. No, we thank you for your service.
So,
I appreciate that.
I think it's a very important thing that you hold the world's attention.
Absolutely.
Because these
Absolutely.
things don't happen.
And that's the question.
in a year
So
or 2 years.
how do you get the world's attention is the question.
You need the world's best marketing team to keep people's attention. I don't know if it's not. I think in the end it comes down to media. Again, what's the hottest thing going on? Again, why ISIS has taken over any of the discourse around Syria and the actual Syrian conflict. It's geographically Syrian, but not the same. But I think for me, from a filmmaker's point of view, it's to keep telling their stories. Something I could do at least, and in general, to have their voices be heard, whether that is through film or anything else. It's that they continue to have some type of outlet to voice their concerns, to voice their opinions, to be free to organize, because a lot of the rebuilding and anything constructive is going to 100% have to revolve around them. None of this implementing any kind of government organization, it's going to be hard, but I think anything the world needs to support the Syrian population's sort of own organic dialogue with each other, first of all, to bring people to the table, and then also to a place, a venue, or whatever, to let them get their voices and concerns heard. Otherwise, they're just going to be shut out with everything else going on.
I know there's more questions, so I'll keep this short. Marketing, social media, sharing their stories, being their voice, being their microphone, not stopping what I'm doing. I will continue to do it. I would like to go again. And just stay as passionate as possible I can in the cause.
I agree with both of them. I think the media has a big role in this, and also anybody's effort is accountable. If every one of us does something, it will make a big effort. And we just have to continue with our work, because these people and these children are going to be the future of Syria. These children had suffered from a permanent traumatized situation, and that will affect the future of Syria. And these children one day is going to build this nation of Syria.
So we have room for one question, and I know they're right. Go ahead. Yeah.
Say you were to remove the Assad regime, who would fill that void of power, and how do you know that it will create a bigger problem?
That's from our high school, freshman.
Wow, president. Future president right there.
So if the Assad regime is removed, who will hold power and how will they hold power? A good question. I don't think anyone knows exactly what will happen. One of the things is that the vacuum that will create, or supposedly create, if the regime is removed, is especially the Assad regime propaganda since day one, is that if we fall, the extremists are taken over and you minorities are dead. That's generally been their rhetoric for in terms of talking to minorities, the Christians, the Alawites, the Druze, whatever. So there is that fear, definitely, that if they fall, the extremists will take over. And the ideal situation would be a civil government, in terms of where people get together and create their own government. But honestly, I can't tell you, and it might have to go through cycles. It might need to go through that Islamist phase before people realize that's not the answer. It just depends on who has the support, financial and military support at any given time. You know, if it does fall and ISIS is the strongest power in the region, they're coming to power. So it's about empowering the right people, I guess. Which again, I unfortunately don't have the solution or answer for that specifically.
That was a very impressive question. From a freshman, right? You're a freshman? Wow.
Freshman in
Good
high
for
school.
you. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer either. I just would like to think it would be a lot better if Assad wasn't ruling that country, just because what he's done is, I don't even understand it. So that's my stance. I've also had very little involvement on the political side of the war. I've just been a humanitarian, so can't really answer the question. I'm sorry.
The Syrian population is 21 million. I'm sure a lot of them, they can replace Assad. I don't know if you had seen I don't know if any of you had seen his interviews. He is really lunatic. I think he's just not living in reality, and he's not focused. And he's not the one who's ruling Syria, believe it or not. Right now, the mullahs of Iran, they are the one who's doing all the decisions, and they're taking actions in Syria. So to answer your question, who will? There is a lot. And Syrian people are very educated. We are very open-minded. We never had these sectarian issues in the past. Assad had brought this recently, just because it helps his position and empower his regime. Syrian people lived all together. I had neighbors who's Christian, had neighbors who's Alawite, Druzi, Sunni, Shia. We never felt any difference between all of us. And Syria will be back to the same situation when Assad falls, because that's who we are. We're just a piece of mosaic piece, and if you take one piece out of it, it won't look the same anymore. And I believe Syria will be free soon, and it will be better Syria without Assad.
Statement. The time has come for Jesus, Moses, and Muhammad to come down.
I don't even know what to say.
Amen.
But I'm with you. Anyways, unfortunately, we are out of time, and Tommy's going to spend a couple minutes here closing. But if you notice, these three individuals here, they have so much passion, so much energy, and so much conviction in making a difference. I would imagine that they'll stick around for at least another 30 minutes or maybe more to answer any other questions that you may have. Please come up, meet them, take pictures with them, and hear directly from them. So with that, I do want to thank the three of you for all your hard work, and especially for coming here to share your perspective with us. Thank you again.
Is it the people that are leaving Syria that's hopeful? Is it people that are displaced that's hopeful? Tens of millions of people. This is the people that are leaving. This is on the cover of The Economist, leaving the Mediterranean to go across to Italy, risking their lives to get away just from oppression and other wars. Or is it the people that we have here at the table, the people that we have here in the room that really care, and that continue to care, to try to make a difference, try to bring some sort of change. When we have our youth, like Frankie, question of the evening. Our freshmen here in Orange County. It's important to us, for our future leaders like that, to get engaged and ask these hard questions. And no one has an answer. Although we came to a close solution in the back earlier tonight. But but no, the light is really everyone in the room here talking about this subject in a real, practical, rational way, keeping it exposed out there, and hopefully that we do something with our elected officials and other people around the world that can do something. And I still make it vague because we don't know what the something is. It's not a very easy solution. But I want to thank you each of our panelists for being here, sharing your stories, and the commitments that you make to your individual commitments. It's huge sacrifices that you do to continue to bring smiles to the faces of the Syrians. We really appreciate it. We have some plaques here that we're going to give you. All right, we want to take some photos with you.